10, and we have now more from our Free Thinking Festival in Mixing It, presented by Mark Russell and Robert Sandell.
Hello, tonight as our contribution to Radio 3's Free Thinking Festival, we feature highlights of a concert which we co-promoted in Liverpool a couple of weekends back with live performances by Numeri and Corporate Athlete. And alongside that, we've got spiffing CD tracks by Joanna Newsom, Biosphere, Igor Krutagolov's Karate Band, and a couple of up-and-coming Liverpudlian acts who we heard about during our recent visit, Mugstar and Pop Levi.
And we open with Choral, the brainchild of New York resident Zachary Mastoon. Should have kept his real name, I reckon. For someone who studied jazz guitar and improvisation with the American heavyweight Anthony Braxton, he hides it well, I think. His new album, Mirrors for Eyes, is full of loping grooves and weird electronica. This is how it opens, Dead Armies. That was Choral, spelt C-A-U-R-A-L, Dead Armies, from the album Mirrors for Eyes on the Mush label, and that's the work of Zachary Mastoon, who's a multi-instrumentalist and producer originally from Chicago. That's his second album on Mush Records, and I have to say it's not all as good as that. Some of it is very good like that, but there is a tendency for sort of almost easy listening jazz noodling on some of it.
I like the harp on that track. Is he actually playing that, or is that a sample? Can you tell
I don't
with your
know,
wizard ears?
It doesn't say on the album, but it could well be.
Your hunch is?
No, I think it's a sample. That's what I guess.
Oh, God, they're so cunning, these modern composer types, aren't they? Now, who or what are Mugstar? The information sheet in front of me is quite specific on this. Mugstar, it says, are the sound of 10,000 suns exploding, pulsing, and repetitive beauty, sounding like a sonic mantra. Mugstar set sail for the Sun in 2002 and have completed numerous voyages with the likes of Mogwai, Melt Banana, Oneida, Acid Mother's Temple, and Part Chimp. Well, so much for the info sheet. More prosaically, Mugstar are an all-instrumental experimental sort of space rock band, two of whose members came up for a chat while we were in Liverpool a couple of weekends back and gave us a copy of their first full album. They claim to be big fans of Hawkwind, and you can hear from this track that ain't no lie. Listen up for My Baby's Skull Has Not Yet Flowered. Oh, their spaceship finally landed. That's Mugstar, My Baby's Skull Has Not Yet Flowered, from their debut album, which is just called Mugstar. And I think they've put it out on their own label, C. And that gives you a pretty good flavour of the album. Actually, that's got slightly more electronic treatments and effects than some of the tracks, which are slightly more unvarnished, sort of instrumental hard rock outs.
Yeah, did just about enough to maintain the interest level. It reminded me a bit of Yola Tango in their more sort of rocking out moments, and I could definitely see the Hawkwind influence. Do you think Hawkwind and bands like that are making a comeback?
Well, there was certainly a very strong Hawkwindy kind of vibe around the concerts that they actually came along to watch, which was given by Numeri. I mean, Numeri are more sort of probably more jazz influence than that. But yes, I think certainly up in Liverpool they seem to count for quite a lot. Surprising amount, you might think.
Yeah. Right, well, those nice people at Unknown Public have turned their hand to another compilation. This one is called Critical Notice. It's a collection of short works by 11 contemporary classical composers who have all been part of the Contemporary Voices scheme run by the British Music Information Centre. I'd say this collection, accompanied by thought-provoking essays, is a really good way to get into new classical music. It's very well paced, expertly sequenced, and it's accessible as well. Here's a delicate work by the Cornish composer who's now based in Holland, Richard Ayres. It's a homage to the seascape painter Alfred Wallace. I love the shimmering instrumental textures here, and listen out for a surprise appearance towards the end. That was a piece by Richard Ayres called Wallace. It's a homage to the naive painter Alfred Wallace, who died in 1942, who painted Cornish seascapes, and that was played by the ensemble Apartment House, Anton Lukashevich on solo cello, Gavin Morrison flute, Andrew Sparling clarinet, Gordon McKay violin, and Richard Benjerfield on percussion. And we found that on an album called Critical Notice, put together by the Unknown Public.
Well, you found it, Mark,
Yeah.
actually. How well known are these people?
Well, in new contemporary music circles, they're pretty well known. Composers like Graham Fitkin, Luke Stoneham, Joe Cutler, Evelyn Ficarra, pretty well-known names on the contemporary music circuit. But like all things that Unknown Public do, the pieces are very well chosen and very well sequenced, and it's a very enjoyable listen.
But this, rather than most of their things are themed, aren't they? This is actually driven just by a particular style and the people, the composers themselves.
Yes, this isn't an Unknown Public issue. They're sort of guest compilers for the British Music Information Centre. Yeah. And on our playlist, we'll put a link to their website, because you can actually download a lot of these pieces. I think most of them are not commercially available before.
Now for our Liverpool concert package, which we recorded 2 weekends back, outside Tesco's, in fact, in the heart of Liverpool in the St John's Shopping Centre. First up, Super Numeri. Now, after the gig, I spoke to two members of the band, bass player Snap Ant and guitarist Carl Webb. And first I asked Snap Ant to take me through the lineup of the band.
Well, today we had a 7-piece performing, a few people that have played with us in the past. Harry Sumnall, actually a guest today. He was playing the keys, and there was James Pagella on the drums. And there was Stan Ambrose, who's recorded with us in the past. Carl
Stan
Webb.
Ambrose is the harpist.
Stan Ambrose is the harpist, yeah?
Yeah, no, he was fantastic. How did you come to hook up with him?
Well, he's been playing in Liverpool for many years, and we came across him playing in a cafe. And at the time, we were thinking about putting together a Supernumerary album, and we thought he'd be really great to ask and get involved. And so, we just took it from there, and he was very willing to do it.
He certainly looked very happy up there, I must say.
Yeah,
it's a wonderful thing. You don't often see a Celtic harpist in a sort of improvising space rock band.
Well, when we first recorded, we had to give him some, minor direction, but ever since then he's been very natural, adding a good texture to our driving rhythms.
Yeah. So who else?
Well, sitting next to me, Carl Webb, who's playing guitar. Who else have we had today?
Ray the Sax, who's played with Spiritualized and played all over with a lot of people. Chris Preston on percussion. He's played on the albums that we've done. That's it. That's everybody.
So 7-piece today, and you, as the bass player, Snap Ant, are very much at the driving end of things. I heard certain echoes of bands such as Can and so forth. Was that a conscious influence on your part?
Not really. People say that we sound like Can, and I do like Can very much, and I can see what they mean. But really, my role as the bass player has really evolved with the kind of collective conscience of the band, because everyone kind of spirals off doing what they do with other instruments. I'm the exception, and I keep it the anchor with the drums as well, I suppose. But whereas other people prefer to kind of add texture, I like to have the kind of the constant. But yeah, in terms of influence, it's been something that's developed by itself. When we put the band together, it was we all were listening to Miles Davis, and we thought we'd put something together in that kind of vein. But
that's a pretty ambitious thing to start off doing, isn't it? We are talking about one of the giants of
of course,
modern music.
Well, we were listening to things like Dark Magus, and not necessarily the kind of virtuoso musical excellence of Miles Davis, but more along the lines of the kind of the tangents that he took in the 70s.
So, Carl, how do you see yourselves sitting in the sort of the Liverpool musical context? Because a lot of people, I think, probably don't associate Liverpool with the kind of music that you play.
It's probably not so much sitting, it's more sort of floating around in the ether, It's a hard kind of music to pin down. People say, what kind of music is it? I normally say, well, it's instrumental, but, is it jazz? It's jazz in the way that it has improvisation in it, but it's not jazz in the way that it has 32 bar structures, and it's not really solo based. Take a solo now, sax player. It's more textural.
And how did you all get together?
James, Snap Ant, Pop Levi and I all met at uni,
Liverpool University.
at LIPA.
Oh, right.
Although our biog wouldn't say that. It would say we met somewhere remote, you know.
Yeah.
We were all improvising in the street. And
And how did it feel up there this afternoon? How did you feel it was going down?
it felt really good, actually. And it's a strange venue to play that type of music on a Saturday afternoon, playing improvised, slightly avant-garde music. But it was good. It was good. It was a good sound on stage. Nobody threw anything at us. And it was really enjoyable, actually.
That was part of Supernumeri's live set outside Tesco's in Liverpool, which we recorded a couple of weekends back. Supernumeri were surprisingly popular with the local shoppers, I must say. They really held the audience, and these were not particularly, by the looks of it, sophisticated music listeners, but Supernumeri really spoke to them. And I was particularly entertained to see Stan the harpist up there on the stage, sitting on the edge. There didn't seem to be much eye contact between him and the rest of the band, but they got along like a house on fire.
Yeah, I like his the sound he makes. Well, from Stan the Liverpudlian harpist to Joanne Newsom, the American singer and harpist. She's got a new album out. It's called Ys, spelt Y-S. And it really is something of a mighty collaboration. Steve Albini first recorded all the harp and vocal parts. Van Dyke Parks then supplied the very ornate orchestral accompaniments. And Jim O'Rourke edited and mixed the whole thing. This all happened over a period of several months. And I'd say the whole thing comes across as a huge labour of love. It has shades of Bjork in the vocals and also the scale of the production, but it has the identity of the arranger Van Dyke Parks stamped all over it, I think, and this is my favourite track. It's called Cosmia.
When you ate, I saw your eyelashes. Saw them shake like wind on rushes in the cornfield when she called me. Moths around me thought they'd drown me. And I miss your precious heart. And I miss your precious heart. Dried rose petals, red round circles, frame your eyes and stain your knuckles. Dried rose petals, red brown circles, frame your eyes and stain your knuckles. And all those lonely nights down by the river brought me bread and water in. But though I tried so hard, my little darling, I couldn't keep the night from coming in. And all those lonely nights down by the river brought me bread and water and a kiss in the can. Now in the quiet hour when I am sleeping, I cannot keep the night from coming in. Why you gone away again? I'll sleep through the rest of my days. If you're gone away again, I'll sleep through the rest of my days. And I will sleep through the rest of my days. And I'll sleep through the rest of my days. I tried so hard, my little darling, I couldn't keep the night from coming in. And all those lonely nights down by the river brought me bread and water in a kith in the can. Now in the quiet hour when I am sleeping, I cannot keep the night from coming in. Beneath the porch light, we've all been circling, beat our dust hearts, singe our flower wings. But in the corner, something is happening. Wild cosmea, what have you seen? Water were your limbs and the fire was your hair. And then the moonlight caught your eye and you rose through the air. Well, if you've seen true light, then this is my prayer. Will you call me when you get there? And I miss your precious heart. And I miss your precious heart. And miss, 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 and miss your heart. But release your precious heart to its feast for precious heart.
That was Joanna Newsom, Cosmere, the final track on her new album Ys, Y-S, which is on the Drag City label. It's a very, very interesting album, this. There are 5 tracks, some of them sort of 15 minutes long. If I was being kind, I'd say it's rhapsodic. If I was being unkind, I'd say it's rambling. But it does require a lot of listening. And I think the way it's put together is particularly odd, because when they wanted to get that live feel, she improvises quite a lot when she writes these songs. Van Dyke Parks wanted finished versions of the songs. So then he took those recordings and had to work the orchestral arrangements around that, which must have been incredibly hard work.
Yeah, no, I do like his arrangements. And although I'm a bit of an agnostic on Joanna Newsom, because I'm not really wild about her voice, I think doing this kind of sort of Bjorky pastiche, really, it probably is as good as I've heard her personally, sounding in the vocal department. But no, an interesting record, that. Now, here's another one. Igor Krutogolov is a young mover and shaker in the Israeli underground noise and avant rock scene, a cultural movement of which I must confess I was totally ignorant until I listened to Igor and his karate band's new CD, Children for Music. He calls this a noisy experimental comedy record, made with cheap instruments, various toys, and a shed-load of unfettered imagination. So what we have are 7 tracks of thoroughly engaging lunacy, which should equally appeal to the very young, the old enough to know better, and the seriously deranged. This is Adidas in Your Ass. wonderful what you can do when you set your mind to it, isn't it? That's Adidas In Your Ass by Igor Krutagolov's Karate Band from his album, well, it's a mini-album really, Children for Music. And highly recommend this quite fairly amusing, as he calls it, experimental comedy record.
Sounded like the noise of a donkey braying at the end. Do you think that's what the title was about?
Well,
Adidas
Mark,
In Your Ass
you're,
Donkey.
You're never one to miss a sort of strange animal reference, so I'll just have to take your word for that.
Right, I remember Biosphere, Gear Jensen, coming into the Mixing It studio a few years ago, and he talked about his fondness for the outdoor life. I suppose coming from North Norway, you'd expect him to be used to extreme conditions, but I must say he's excelled himself on his most recent project. In 2001, he went on a 45-day trek to scale the world's 6th largest mountain. It's called Cho Oyu. It's in the Himalayas, and if you're interested, it's 8,201 metres high. Well, when he did it, he documented it in pictures, words and sound. It's all on his new CD. He took a mic and a mini-disc recorder, and when he came back, he's treated these recordings, and he's made a sort of oral journey, I suppose you'd call it. I love the way that a lot of the sounds become music, as you'll hear here. This is a piece recorded in Tingri, which is the last town before climbers start their ascent of Everest or Cho Oyu. So this is called Tingri, the Last Truck. That was Geir Jensen, Tingri, The Last Truck, from his album Cho OU, 8,201 metres, field recordings from Tibet, and that is on the Ash International label. And I said it was Biosphere. He's actually going under his own name, Geir Jensen, this time, so it's not a Biosphere album. Although I have to say, I find this more interesting than some Biosphere albums.
I do too. I like the lorry sounds and so on, mixing with his ethereal atmospheres, because there is something almost too abstract at times about Biosphere, and this gives it gives it slightly more texture.
Well, he often does this in his Biosphere music. You know, you'll hear the sound of a campfire underneath something, but what this album has is it has a sense of context and a sense of journey. You can understand what these sounds are doing there, and when he turns, say, the cowbells or the cattle bells into these sort of lovely musical sounds, it all seems to make sense. It has a lot of focus, this album.
Well, it's much more pictorial because you can identify the sounds, because the trouble with the sounds he normally uses is that they all tend to merge with his electronic sound washes and so forth. Now, the second instalment of our Free Thinking Weekend Liverpool concert. This features Corporate Athlete, which is the performing alias of Rob Strachan. Now, he's part of an organisation called Hive Collective, which was formed to promote electronic music in Liverpool, and he told me how they got started.
We put on 4 fairly unknown acts and didn't know whether anybody would turn up, and it sold out, and every event sold out ever since. So it's been a success in those terms, and it's a kind of hidden audience in Liverpool, I guess.
Do you think this has got anything to do with you yourself are a lecturer at the Institute of Popular Music. Is it something to do with the growth of tertiary education in Liverpool?
I guess. I mean, if you think that Liverpool is increasingly a student city, it's got 40,000 students in a city of 500,000, so that's a big percentage, really. The acts that we put on are a mix of people who've moved to the city for education and people who were born and brought up here. So, I think that's probably something to do with it.
Well, I was very impressed watching your set earlier with the way in which you managed to engage an audience who were, for the most part, not students, I've got to say.
Sure.
Yeah, they were regular people who were very much enjoying a set which started off in a pretty challenging style and moved, I suppose, a bit closer to a sort of kind of techno rhythm bass. How did you design that set?
It's probably to do with my eclectic tastes anyway. When I was thinking about doing this set, it was trying to build something from something that was experimental to something that was more accessible, because those are 2 parts of what I do, really. It's kind of slightly schizophrenic musically in that way. I do quite a lot of low temperature kind of dub delay things.
I could hear that.
Kind of simple piano melodies buried under lots of kind of effects and things. But I also do a more 4-to-the-4 techno set as well. So what I wanted to do was kind of showcase both of those elements, I suppose. Well,
it moved rather nicely, seamlessly almost from one to the other. So how do you build up your piece that you started with today? How do you build up something like that?
I mean, I guess that started off with the melody, and then the melodies kind of suggest rhythmic patterns to kind of be layered over the top of that. So I'll generally start off with a fairly simple idea, simple kind of 4-bar, 8-bar kind of repetitive melody, because I like a tune as well, and then build rhythms through that. And I guess that's what the way that the pieces work anyway. I tend to introduce something and then kind of layer it up with rhythmic elements.
And what equipment are you using? You seem to have 3 separate sort of sound sources up there.
Okay, so I was using Ableton Live, which is a computer program, to mix everything. So I had a number of samples, which are kind of loops, those are the kind of rhythmic patterns that I've built up. I also use some MIDI plug-in synths, and today I was using a guitar as well, which again goes directly through Ableton, so you can kind of manipulate the sound there. And I was also using an EBO to give a kind of shimmering sound to the guitar, I guess.
It was all action, I could see. There was never you had very little time to just sort of sit back and let it happen.
Sure, I mean, and that's the thing about laptop performance, I suppose. Having done sat through lots and lots of laptop performances, it varies, I guess. So some people just sit there and play the sound files, essentially. But because Corporate Athlete is mainly a live project, and when I first started it, I thought, well, I need to be doing something on stage. And also you can kind of react to what's going on, and you can elongate things if it's going particularly well. You can foreshorten them.
So there's an improvisational element to it.
Definitely, yeah. And especially with kind of the introduction of the guitar as well, because I try and kind of let that wash over into the different pieces and then introduce certain things. So I'll introduce a melody, and then I'll introduce the rhythmic elements when it feels right.
That was Corporate Athlete, live outside Tesco's in Liverpool's St John's shopping centre, which we recorded a couple of weekends back. I very much enjoyed the concert, very much enjoyed meeting the musicians and mixing it. Sincere thanks to Liverpool Music Week, who co-promoted the concert with us.
And if you'd like details of any of tonight's music from the show, you can find it on our playlist, which you can see on CFAX page 652, or you can write to us for it, Mixing It, BBC Broadcasting House, London W1A 1AA, or you can send us an email, mixing.it@bbc.co.uk. We love receiving your emails. I'm just holding one now. It's apropos of nothing. I just thought I'd read it because I like it. Dear Dastardly and Muttley, 27th October, Mixing It was your finest show since that one from Russia with the recording of the shaman turning himself into a raven. Hooray, nitrous McBread. You see? Bloody marvellous, isn't it? Send us more like that. Mixing.it@bbc.co.uk, or you can go to the website, bbc.co.uk/Radio 3. You can add your comments to the new music message board, and you can listen to the show again for the whole of the next week.
And we leave you with a track by a man who is, nominally at least, still a member of the Liverpool band we featured earlier in concert, Super Numeri. This is Pop Levi, who's just launching a solo career with his EP Blue Honey, a wild fusion of unlikely pop influences from Mark Bolan to Prince, mediated by a curious rhythmic sensibility which simultaneously makes you feel you ought to dance but will lead you into terrible trouble if you try. We're back next week with an all-CD edition. Until then, good night.
Good night.
was Blue Honey by Pop Levi, bringing to an end tonight's Mixing It. The programme was presented by Robert Sandell and Mark Russell, and the producer was Philip Tackney.